Hello and welcome to our tutorial on translating spreadsheets in Smartling. In this video, we will look at the different formatting and upload options that are available so you can choose the right one for you. Choosing the correct format for your spreadsheet is a very important step to make sure that only the text that you actually want to translate will be uploaded to Smartling and sent for translation. If you do not apply any particular format to your file before you upload it, Smartling will send all columns, all cells, and all sheets for translation, even if they contain only internal notes that are not meant for translation. This can lead to delays and, of course, to unnecessary translation costs. So to avoid this, we will look at 3 different formatting options that allow you to process your file correctly, so that only the text that actually needs to be translated will be uploaded to Smartling. We will start with a simple, standardized template, and then we will move on to more flexible and customizable alternatives. At the end of this video, we will give you a quick overview of the advantages of each option, so you can choose the best one for your file. Of course, you can find timestamps for all upload options in the video description. The easiest way of uploading your Excel spreadsheet to Smartling is by using our pre-configured Smartling Excel template. This first option is ideal if you want to translate a simple spreadsheet with just one tab. To make use of our Smartling Excel template, the columns in your file need to follow a very specific order. Most importantly, the text to translate always needs to be located in column A, which is the first column in your file. This cannot be moved around to a different column. Any text that is not in column A will simply not be sent for translation. The first row, which typically only contains some headers, will also stay untranslated. Next up, in column B, you can include some optional instructions for your translators. The information provided here will be visible to the linguists in a very prominent position in their translation interface. So this is a great way of providing further context and explanations about the text to translate. And lastly, in column C, you can include character limits if the translation should not exceed a certain character count. Please make sure to include only numeric values here and only type in the maximum character count that can be used by the translators. You do not need to create a column for the translated languages. Our system will add these columns automatically once your job is completed and you download the output file. Now that you have formatted all columns in the correct order, please make sure to save your file. We are now ready to upload the file to Smartling. From the Jobs tab, you can click the Request Translation button to create a new job. Simply drag and drop your file in here. You can now see a drop-down menu that allows you to select the desired file format. Please make sure to select the Smartling Excel template. Next, you will be asked to specify if your file contains any translator instructions and character limits. Our example file does contain string instructions in column B and character limits in column C, so we will select this option. The other option, called No String Instructions and Character Limits, is meant for Excel files that only have some text to translate in column A, but don't contain any additional instructions or character limits. Now that you have selected the correct file template, you can simply follow your normal process to create and authorize the job. The linguists working on this job will now only see the first column from your file as translatable text. The instructions and explanations from column B are visible right above the text to translate. The character limits are displayed directly in the translation field, and a warning sign appears as soon as this limit is exceeded. Once the job has been completed, you will receive an email notification, and you can download the translated file. Simply come back to your completed job, and click into the Files tab. You can now click the Download File button and select the exact format that you would like to receive. By default, we will download the translations for all languages in one single file. You can choose how you would like to display the name of each language in your output file. Let's go with the easiest option and select Language and Country only. As a last step, please choose the languages that you would like to include in the download. Once you hit Confirm, you will receive the translated Excel file. You can see a column for each target language. Your source text in column A and the column headers in the first row have been preserved in English. If you would like to have a bit more flexibility with your file format, you can make use of the Microsoft Excel option. With the Microsoft Excel format, you can place the text to translate in any column that is convenient for you. You can send multiple columns or even multiple tabs for translation in one go. In our example, the text to translate is in column E, so your source text does not necessarily need to be located in column A. Instead, to avoid uploading text for translation that is just meant for internal use or only contains some metadata, we can use a cell style called NOTRANSLATE that we can apply to any cells and any sheets that should not be sent for translation. To create this cell style, please navigate to your formatting pane and create a new cell style. You can call this style NOTRANSLATE in all caps and with no spaces. If you don't want to introduce any additional formatting style, simply remove all style properties and click OK. Your NOTRANSLATE style has now been created and can be applied to any cells that should stay untranslated. First, let's mark up any columns containing internal notes and select the NOTRANSLATE cell style from our formatting pane. The translator instructions and character limits should also be marked up with this cell style. They will need to be added to the content at a later point directly in smartling. The headers in row 1 should also stay untranslated, so we will also mark them up with the NOTRANSLATE style. In our example, we also have a second sheet here that will be uploaded to smartling. We can follow the same process. Simply mark up any cells that should not be translated and select the NOTRANSLATE style. Before we upload this file for translation, it is worth noting that the translations will overwrite your source text. So if we send this file for translation into French, the French text will overwrite the English source column here. If you prefer having a separate column for your translations, you can simply copy and paste the source text into a new column. You can now mark up the English source column with the NOTRANSLATE style, so it will stay untranslated in your output file. This means that the translations will appear here in column F, while the English source text, which is marked up with the NOTRANSLATE style, will remain untranslated in column E. Now let's save our file and then upload it to smartling. To create a new job, please click the Request Translation button in your Jobs tab. You can now drag and drop your file and select the Upload option Microsoft Excel from the drop-down menu. You can then select your target languages and save the job. If your file contains any character limits or translator instructions, they need to be set up from the Strings view. From your Jobs tab, simply select the job that you just created and click View Strings. Please select any strings that you would like to add character limits or translator instructions for. From the Actions menu, you can now provide the necessary information for the translators. Once all of the necessary instructions have been added, you can now go ahead and authorize the translation job. One of the advantages of this Microsoft Excel file is that your translators can see the entire Excel sheet in their context window. This can come in handy if your file contains helpful contextual information or even some images. Any instructions and character limits that you added from the strings view will also be visible to the translators. Once your job has been completed, you can download the translated file for each target language. Please navigate to the Files tab in your job and click Download File. For Microsoft Excel files, you will need to download one file per language. The option to download all languages within a single file is not available for Microsoft Excel. Once you have selected the languages that you want to download, you will receive a zip folder that contains a separate translated file for each language. In our example, we received one output file for German and a different file for French. Sometimes your spreadsheets might contain some additional elements that cannot be processed in either of the two Excel formats. So as a third option for uploading your spreadsheets, you can use a CSV file. CSV or comma-separated values files can be created directly from Excel or Google Sheets. They are a great alternative to Excel when it comes to uploading your spreadsheets for translation, as they provide even more control and flexibility. In particular, you might want to opt for a CSV format if your file contains elements like keys or string IDs, placeholders for variable text elements, or HTML tags. In Excel, it is not possible to set up keys for your strings. Placeholders and HTML tags simply appear as regular translatable text in Excel, which can be confusing for your translators. CSV files, on the other hand, allow you to handle all of these elements in a fully customizable way by applying so-called file directives. File directives are instructions that you can add to your CSV file to tell Smartling exactly how your file should be processed. Before we'll convert our spreadsheet to a CSV file, we will need to make sure that the columns are in the correct order. All meta information like translator instructions, keys, and character limits need to be located to the left side of the translatable text, so our system can pair them up correctly. Now this file can be downloaded in a CSV format. To convert your Excel spreadsheets into a CSV file, you can simply select the option Save As, CSV with UTF-8 encoding. Alternatively, if you're using Google Sheets, you can download the spreadsheet as a comma-separated values file. Please note that only the sheet that you are currently displaying will be downloaded. Multiple tabs are not supported in CSV, so if your spreadsheet contains more than one tab, you will need to create a separate CSV file for each of them. Now that you have downloaded the CSV file, you will need to add some smartling directives to make sure that the document will be processed correctly. To add some directives to your file, please open it in a text editor. You can use any text editor of your choice. For today's example, I will be using Sublime Text, which is available for both Mac and Windows. Once you have installed and opened your text editor, you will just see a blank window. You can simply drag and drop your CSV file in here. It is easy to see now where the name CSV or comma-separated values is coming from. Each column from our spreadsheet is separated by a comma in the CSV file. To add some smartling directives, simply click into the very beginning of the file and hit Enter to create an extra row. You can now insert the directives into this blank row. You can find all available directives in the article about CSV files in our Help Center. You might want to open this article in a separate browser window while you are preparing your file, so you can simply copy and paste the necessary directives over to your text editor. To get started, we want to make sure that the first row in our file, which only contains some headers, will not be uploaded for translation. So we need to apply a directive called first row header. In our Help Center article, you can look for first_row_header and simply copy over the directive that you can find here. All of our CSV directives start with a hash code and then contain some instructions to tell our platform how the file should be processed. First row header equals true means that the first row in our spreadsheet contains only some headers and will stay untranslated. Simply paste the directive into the blank row at the beginning of your CSV file. Then hit Enter to create some space for our next directive. Next, we need to apply a directive to let Smartling know which column contains the text to translate. To do this, we need to apply the smartling.paths directive. You can find this directive in our Help Center article by looking for smartling.paths. You can copy over the example directive that you can find here and simply adjust the column number. In CSV, we use numbers instead of letters to identify the different columns in your file. Column 1 corresponds to column A in your spreadsheet, column 2 is column B, column 3 is column C, etc. So in our example, the translatable text is located in column B, which is column 2. So we will adjust the directive to say smartling.paths equals 2. Now let's hit Enter to create a new row for our next directive. This next step is optional. For our example file, we want to specify that column A contains our keys or string identifiers. So we need to insert a directive called source key paths. In our Help Center article, you can find this directive by looking for source_key_paths. Simply copy over the example directive and paste it into your CSV file. The directive says that column 1, which is column A, contains the keys. This works perfectly for our example file, and we can simply hit Enter. If your file contains any placeholders for variable text elements, you can add another directive to make sure that they will be processed correctly. In our example, the text within curly brackets should stay untranslated, as this is simply a placeholder for a customer name. In a CSV file, we can apply a directive to make sure that this part of the text won't be translated. You can find this in our Help Center article by looking for placeholder_format_custom. To determine which part of the text should be treated as a placeholder, we need to use a language called regex or regular expressions. For our example file, we can simply copy over the directive that we can find here. These regex symbols stand for all content in curly brackets. So we are telling Smartling to block the text in curly brackets from translation. If you're using a different format to indicate the placeholders in your file, you can access this link in our Help Center to find some more examples. Let's hit Enter again in our CSV file. Lastly, we want to specify that all languages should be downloaded in one single file once the translations are ready. In our Help Center, you can search for the directive called translations_in_columns. Simply copy over this directive and paste it into your text editor. This tells Smartling that a separate column should be created for each target language, so you can download a single output file. If you would like to add further directives to your file, for example to add translator instructions or character limits, you can find all of them in our Help Center article. Once you have added all necessary directives, please save your file directly from the text editor. We are now ready to upload the CSV file to Smartling. You can click the Request Translation button in your Jobs tab and drag and drop your file. Then simply follow the regular process to create and authorize the job. By clicking View Strings, you can now see that the keys appear as searchable metadata in Smartling. Let's access the cat tool for one of our languages to check what the translators see on their end. Any HTML tags and placeholders are shown as grayed out fields that cannot be edited or translated by the linguists. This makes the translation process easier, and it ensures that the formatting of your file won't be corrupted. Once the job is completed, you can download all languages in a single file. To do so, please navigate to the Files tab in your project and click into the file that you would like to download. Please click the dark gray Download Files button. To receive only translations that have gone through the full workflow and are completed, please select Published Only. You can now choose to download all languages in one file. Select all languages that you want to include in your output file and click Download. You will now receive a zip folder containing a single CSV file. The easiest and fastest option to display the translated file is by opening it in Google Sheets. You can now see the familiar spreadsheet layout with your keys in column A, your source text in column B, and a separate column for each translated language. If you prefer opening the translated CSV file directly in Excel, you can simply follow the steps outlined in our Help Center article. This is important to make sure that any non-English characters will be displayed correctly without being corrupted. To reduce the effort of adding directives to your CSV files, Smartling also offers the option to set up pre-configured CSV templates that allow you to drag and drop your file without any manual preparation work. Please feel free to reach out to your Smartling Customer Success Manager if your files always follow the same format and could potentially benefit from a pre-configured template. So to summarize, you can choose between 3 upload options based on your requirements. Generally speaking, we would recommend opting for a CSV format if your file contains HTML tags, placeholders, or keys. These elements cannot be processed correctly in Excel. On the other hand, if your file contains any styling, like underlined and bold words or colors, you will need to opt for an Excel file if you would like to preserve this formatting in the translated file. As CSV is purely data-based, styling like bold text and colors will not be preserved. If your spreadsheet contains more than one tab to translate, you can either create a separate file per sheet, or you can opt directly for a Microsoft Excel file to upload all tabs in one go. The main limitation of the Microsoft Excel file is, however, related to downloading the translated files. With Microsoft Excel, you need to download a separate file for each language. On the other hand, CSV files and our Smartling Excel template allow you to download all languages in a single file. If your file contains many duplicate strings, you might want to opt for a CSV file. In CSV, any identical strings are automatically deduplicated so they only need to be translated once. In Excel, on the other hand, any duplicate strings need to be translated as repetitions. If your file contains multiple rows that should not be uploaded for translation, Microsoft Excel is the only option that allows you to mark up not just an entire column, but also single rows and cells with the NOTRANSLATE style. You will also need to opt for Microsoft Excel if you would like the entire sheet to be displayed to the translators for visual context. For example, if your spreadsheet includes helpful images. If you are using a CSV file or our smartling Excel template, you would need to use an alternative solution to provide some visual context for your translators. For example, by uploading an image to your job or by using our Context Capture Chrome extension. Lastly, we would recommend using the native file format whenever possible. Some applications and programs allow you to export your content directly in a CSV format. In these cases, we would recommend sticking with the original CSV format to allow for a smooth re-import. Please feel free to visit our Help Center for further information on all three file formats. Of course, you can also reach out to your smartling Customer Success Manager for further recommendations. Thank you very much for watching and for your time today.